Here is something that gets said about Buddhist practice so often that it has become almost automatic, and it is almost entirely wrong. The thing people say is this: you should not get attached. If you learn not to be attached to the people you love, to the things that matter to you, to the versions of your life you have built and care about, then loss will not hurt you. This is what most people understand Buddhist teaching to mean, and it is, in the most important ways, a misreading. Because here is the thing about not getting attached. You have already tried it. You have tried to care less about the person you are most afraid of losing. You have tried to hold the good thing loosely, reminded yourself that nothing is permanent, told yourself you should be prepared, and none of it worked. Not because you failed at the practice, because the practice, as most people describe it, is not actually the teaching. The teaching is older than the misreading, and it does not ask you to love less. It does not ask you to prepare for loss by preemptively withdrawing from what you love. It does not ask you to become a person who does not particularly mind what happens to the people and moments and seasons of your life. That person is not enlightened. That person has simply closed something down. And you already know, somewhere in you, the difference between those two things, between the person who has found peace with impermanence and the person who has simply gone numb to it. They do not look alike from the inside. Tonight we are going to sit with the actual teaching, the one that is underneath the misreading, the one that the teachers spent centuries trying to point toward in parables and stories and small examples drawn from the daily life of the monastery, because the direct statement of it was too easy to misunderstand, because people kept hearing nothing stays and thinking it meant love less when it never meant that at all. You are lying here tonight with something you are afraid of losing. You do not need to name it out loud. You already know what it is. It might be a person, someone whose presence in your life has become so central that the thought of them being gone produces in you a specific physical contraction, a tightening in the chest that arrives before the thought has even fully formed. It might be a moment in your life that you know is already passing, a season, a stage of something, a way that things currently are between you and someone you love, something that is good right now in a way that you cannot quite trust, will remain exactly this good. It might be a version of yourself, something about who you are in this particular chapter of your life, something you have built or become or arrived at that you are quietly and continuously afraid of losing. Whatever it is, you did not choose to be afraid of it. The fear of loss is what love looks like when it encounters the nature of things. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence that you are too attached. It is evidence that you love something, and that you know, in whatever part of you knows these things, that everything you love is also moving, that the particular shape of the good thing you have right now will not be exactly this shape tomorrow. You have been carrying this tonight. You may have been carrying it for longer than just tonight. It is possible you have been carrying it for months, or for a year, or for several years. The specific familiar weight of something good that might not stay. Something good that is already changing in ways you can feel more than you can describe. The tiredness in your body right now is not only the tiredness of today. Some of what you are feeling tonight is the accumulated weight of having loved something carefully for a long time, in conditions that could not promise the love would be returned in kind by the future. The teachers noticed this. They always noticed. They noticed it in the students who came to the monastery already carrying it, and they noticed it in the long-serving monks who had developed enough equanimity to manage it on ordinary days, but who still felt it. In the small hours of difficult seasons, as a presence that ordinary wisdom could not entirely dissolve, and they spent centuries telling stories about it, because stories can take you somewhere that instruction cannot. A story enters through a different door. It bypasses the part of the mind that evaluates and judges and determines whether the incoming information is consistent with what is already known. It reaches something older. 7 of those stories are waiting for you tonight. They are not about how to stop loving. They are not about how to prepare to lose. They are about what happens when a person learns to love the river as a river, moving always the same river and never the same water. We will begin there. We will take our time, and by the end of tonight, the weight you have been carrying may not have disappeared. The teaching is not a cure for fear, and it makes no such promise, but it may have shifted into something that takes less effort to hold. We are in no hurry here. The night is long and patient, and asks nothing from you but your presence. Let yourself arrive exactly as tonight has made you. That is exactly right. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you are listening from. Some of you are in the early hours just after the household has gone quiet and the day has finally released its hold on you. Some of you are deeper in the 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock hours, when the mind surfaces on its own and begins its quiet inventory of the things it cannot resolve in the dark. Some of you arrived here already half in sleep, already somewhere between waking and wherever the body goes when it finally lets go of the day, which is perhaps the best place to receive what is coming. All of these are welcome. All of these are the right time to arrive. There is something important in knowing you are not alone in this particular room of feeling, the room of loving something and being afraid it will not stay. Tonight, in many different cities and many different kinds of dark, other people are lying with the same quiet weight. Some of them are afraid of the same kind of loss you are. Some of them arrived here not knowing why they felt drawn to listen, only knowing they needed something in the dark that their ordinary resources could not provide. Some of them know exactly what they are afraid of losing and have not been able to say it aloud. Some of them are not sure. They only know the feeling, which is real, even when the name for it is unclear. All of them are here, and so are you. This matters more than it might seem. The specific experience of lying in the dark with the weight of something you are afraid of losing has a particular quality of isolation. It tends to feel like a private difficulty, like something in the construction of your particular life, rather than something inherent in the nature of love itself. The mind produces reasons for why this particular fear is yours. You are too attached. You love the wrong way. You have failed to understand something that other people have understood. You are weaker or more frightened or less prepared than the people around you who seem to move through the world without this weight. But the fear of loss is not a character flaw. It is not a spiritual failure. It is what love looks like when it encounters impermanence, which is what love always encounters. Because impermanence is not an occasional feature of life, but the medium in which everything occurs. To love truly is to encounter this. The people who seem to move through the world without it are either not loving truly, or managing the fear very well, or they are hurting in private, in the same hours you are. You are not alone in this room. You have never been alone in this room. The room is very large and full, and everyone in it is here because they love something and know it is moving. We are glad you came. We will begin now, slowly, together. There is a river. Let us begin with the river, because the river is the oldest teacher of this particular lesson, and the teachers knew it, and so the river appears again and again in the texts that were carried across mountain passes and river valleys and centuries of human forgetting and remembering. It appears not because rivers are symbolic, but because rivers are obvious, because the teaching the teachers were trying to convey is so thoroughly visible in any river that the real question is not how to understand it, but why it is so easy to overlook. A river is always moving, not metaphorically, not as a description of a general quality. Actually, literally, always. The water that was here a moment ago is already downstream, already elsewhere, already in the process of becoming something else. The water you see in a river right now is not the water you will see if you look again, and yet the river is the same river. The villagers who have drawn water from it for generations call it by the same name their grandparents used, because it is the same river, and they are right. And also, they have never put their hands in the same water twice, and they are also right about that. Both things are true simultaneously. The river holds the contradiction without difficulty. You can love a river. A person can love a river deeply, can know its moods and its seasons, can know the particular quality of light on its surface in the late afternoon of midsummer, can know the sound it makes in the spring flood versus the quiet muttering of a dry season autumn, can know the particular cold of it at dawn and the particular warmth it holds at the end of a long, clear day. A person can love a river their whole life. The river will not stay the same. These two facts do not contradict each other. They never did. The word the Buddhist teachers used is anicca, a Pali word that means impermanence, the characteristic of change, the simple and total observation that everything that arises also passes. Anicca is one of the three marks of existence in the tradition, one of the three things that are true of every single phenomenon, without exception, from the longest-lived mountain range to the briefest moment of joy. Everything that comes into being passes. Everything that arises goes. Nothing holds its form forever. This is not, the teachers insisted, a sad teaching. It is received as a sad teaching. People hear it and feel something close, and that something close is often grief, or the precursor to grief, the anticipatory weight of the thing being true. But the teachers were pointing at something else with it, not a cause for grief, a cause for a different kind of looking. Here is where the misreading enters, and it enters almost automatically in the space between hearing and understanding. A person hears nothing stays, and the mind translates this quickly and without consultation into an instruction. Therefore, love less, love loosely, don't get too attached. Be prepared for the ending. Pre-grieve what you love, so that when the grief arrives it is less, and the misreading is understandable. There is a logic to it, a sad logic. If the teaching is about impermanence, and impermanence is what makes loss painful, then the natural protective response is to reduce one's investment in the impermanent things, to pull back from the river before it changes, to love less so that there is less to lose. But this is not what the teachers were pointing at, not one of the great teachers, not in any of the traditions that emerged from the original insight. The evidence is in the stories they chose to tell, because none of the stories the teachers left behind are about people who loved less. All of them are about people who learned to love differently, more fully, more honestly, with the particular quality of attention and presence that only arrives when you are no longer asking the thing you love to be other than what it is. The anchor image for tonight is the river, not a river in a photograph, the actual river, which is never the same twice, which you can love your whole life, which will not hold still for you, which will be gone and present and gone again in the same moment, and which is, in all of this, exactly what it is, not diminished by its moving, not less itself for having changed, not less worthy of love, because the love it receives cannot stop it. Each story tonight will return to the river from a different angle. Some of them are about the grief of losing something, and what the grief, when you stay with it long enough, eventually reveals about the nature of what was love. Some of them are about what remains after a thing is gone, and how what remains is not nothing, is in fact something precise and real, even if it is different in form from what came before. Some of them are about the particular freedom that arrives when a person stops asking the river to stop and finds that what they love has always been the river itself, not the water that was in it on a particular day. The image will be there beneath all 7 stories, the way a river is beneath the sound of everything else in a valley where a river runs, continuous, present, moving, available to whoever comes to it with open hands. Here is how one teacher framed it, simply, to a student who came to him in the season after a significant loss. The student said, "I loved the spring. Spring has ended. I am sad." The teacher said, "Does spring coming back next year mean you were wrong to love this spring?" The student said, "No." The teacher said, "Then what are you grieving?" The student thought about it for a long time. Then he said, "I am grieving that it ended." The teacher said, "Yes, that is the right grief. That is love meeting the nature of things. The question is only whether you will let love also meet the next season when it comes. 7 stories are waiting in the direction of that question, and each of them arrives from a different point along the bank of the same river, which is to say, each of them is about a different kind of loss, a different form of the fear of losing, a different moment when a person encountered the moving nature of things and had to decide whether to love the river or to stop loving because the river would not hold still. Together, they will cover a great deal of the territory of what it means to love something through its changing. You will probably find yourself in more than one of them. That is by design. The river has many banks, and tonight we visit several of them. We will begin now with a man who planted something he would never see completed, and what the planting taught him about what he had always been doing, without knowing it, every time he had ever loved anything at all. Let us explore a story about what a garden teaches before it is ready. There was a monk named Shen who arrived at a mountain monastery at the age of 34 and was assigned in his 2nd year to the care of the East Garden. The East Garden was not a beautiful garden. It was a working garden, the kind that produces food rather than contemplation, and its particular quality in the year of Shen's assignment was that it had been neglected for several months. The previous caretaker had left the monastery abruptly, a family crisis pulling him back to the life outside the walls. And in the time since his departure, the garden had done what neglected gardens do. It had become a conversation between the plants that had been deliberately placed there and the plants that had placed themselves without invitation, and the conversation had proceeded entirely on its own terms, without reference to any human preference. Shen was not a gardener. He had grown up in a city, in a household where food came from markets, and the relationship between seed and table was entirely theoretical. He had come to the monastery after many years working in an administrative capacity that had left him competent and quietly exhausted in the particular way of someone who has been applying himself to things that required less than all of him. He knew how to be efficient. He knew how to manage an outcome. He did not know that gardens require a different kind of knowing, the kind that does not begin with an outcome at all. He received the garden assignment without enthusiasm, and that evening compiled a list, which was the thing he always did when facing a task he did not fully understand of the things that needed to be done. The list was, as lists tend to be, about outcomes, about what needed to be removed, what needed to be added, what the garden should look like when the work was complete. He had a destination in mind, a clear, organized picture of what the East Garden should be when he was finished with it. And he arrived the following morning prepared to move directly from the current disorder to that destination. The first year was difficult in the particular way of gardening that begins with an outcome. Reality kept departing from the plan. The plants he removed turned out to have been providing things he had not known about and could not have known about. Shade in one section that had protected a row of herbs from the afternoon heat root structures that had been managing the drainage in a low corner of the garden, in a way that the corner immediately demonstrated it needed when the managing stopped. The soil in the north section responded differently to water than the soil in the south, and understanding why this was true and what it required took the better part of the planting season. By the end of the first year, the garden was different, genuinely different from what it had been, and Shen looked at it with the honest uncertainties of someone who could not quite tell whether different was better. In his second year, he began to listen to the garden rather than to the list. This was not a conscious decision. It was more like the giving up of a particular kind of certainty. The certainty of the person who believes they know what the outcome should be, who arrives at every situation with the destination already mapped. When he stopped arriving at the garden with the destination in mind, the garden began to tell him things. Which plants preferred which positions, how water moved across the terrain in a heavy rain, what the soil in different parts of the garden was suited to, and what it resisted. The garden had knowledge about itself that Shen's list had not been able to include, because the list had been written before he had spent any time with the actual garden. In his third year, he made the decision that changed the quality of everything that followed. He planted a row of trees along the eastern wall. These were not fruit trees. They were slow-growing trees of a kind his teacher had described. Ornamental, structural, the kind that take decades to become what they will be. In full maturity, they would provide shade along the east wall in the late afternoon, anchor the soil against seasonal flooding, and frame the view from the center of the garden in a way that would make the space feel held rather than exposed. His teacher had shown him an ink drawing of the kind of tree which gave some sense of their mature form, broad, settled, their canopy wide and densely shadowed. The trees Shen put in the ground came to his hip. They were unremarkable. They looked like things that had not yet made a decision about what they were going to be. He worked alone that afternoon, turning the soil along the eastern wall in the particular rhythm that sustained labor finds. Not fast, not driven, simply continuous. He set each young tree into its hole carefully, firming the soil around the roots, standing back to check the spacing, moving one slightly when it looked too close to the next. He watered each one with patience and without hurry. He staked them against wind. He worked until the light failed, and then he went inside with the specific quality of tiredness that comes from doing something that will outlast you. His teacher, walking past the garden the following morning and seeing the row of carefully staked young trees, looked at them for a long moment. He said, "You know that these trees will not reach their maturity while you are at this monastery." Shen said that he knew this. His teacher said, "Then what are you doing?" Shen had not formulated an answer to this question. He found he did not have an immediate one. He thought about it for a moment, looking at the young trees in their turned soil, and he said, "I am planting them." His teacher sat down on the low stone wall beside the garden bed. He said, "When did you stop needing to see the end?" This stopped Shen. He turned the question over. He had not stopped needing to see the end exactly. He had simply, in the accumulated and unglamorous way that gardening teaches things, gradually and without announcement, stopped being the only one in the timeline. The trees would be mature in 30 years. He would not be at this monastery in 30 years. Someone would sit in the shade they provided who was perhaps not yet born. The person who would benefit from these trees would not know Shen, would have no way of knowing Shen, would simply live in a garden that had shade along the east wall in the late afternoon, as if that were simply how the garden had always been, and Shen was planting the trees for that person, not through philosophical decision, not through conscious practice of non-attachment, simply because at some point across 3 years of listening to a timeline had quietly expanded to include more than his own presence in it. He was inside something larger than himself. The garden extended forward into time beyond him. The planting was how you participated in what extended forward. You did not need to be in the forward part to make the planting real. He said something like this to his teacher, imperfectly, with the awkwardness of someone discovering a thought while expressing it, rather than expressing a thought they have already understood. His teacher looked at the young trees. Then he looked at Shen. Then he said, "That is the teaching. That is what it means to love something that will outlast you. You have felt something in the direction of this, perhaps not in a garden, perhaps in a child, in the specific love that does not require the child to need you at a particular stage of their life, that plants trees for them even in years when they cannot yet recognize what is being planted. Perhaps in a student, a piece of work you will not see completed, a relationship you have invested, in whose full fruit may ripen in seasons you may not be present for. The specific quality of caring for something without needing to be in the outcome. The relief, and it is a relief, even when it is quiet and unannounced, of discovering that your love does not require the thing it loves to need you present in order for the love to have been real. And there is something else in Shen's story that is worth noticing, something about what the planting cost him and what it did not cost him. The planting did not cost him the grief of leaving. When the time came to go, he felt what there was to feel about going. The trees he had planted did not protect him from the difficulty of departure. They did not make the leaving painless. What they did was give the loving a shape that could continue past the leaving. The grief and the planting were not in conflict. They were both part of the same thing, the love for the garden, which was real, which was his, which did not need him to stay in order to have been genuinely given. This is worth holding for a moment before we continue, because the teaching is sometimes misunderstood to mean that if you love correctly, if you love without grasping, if you love without attachment, if you plant trees without needing to see them mature, then the grief will not come. This is not true, and the teachers never said it was. The grief comes. The grief comes precisely because the love was real, and the love can remain even in the grief, and the grief can deepen the love rather than extinguishing it, and both of these things together, love and grief, fully felt and fully present simultaneously, are what the teaching is trying to point toward when it says that the river and the loving of the river can coexist in the same heart at the same time. Shen tended the East Garden for 11 more years before he left the monastery to care for his aging parents. In the last autumn before he left, he rose early and walked to the garden before the others were awake. The morning was cold and clear, the first frost of the season on the ground, the air the kind of clean and still that comes in the hours before dawn in late autumn. He stood among the plants he had come to know by name, and the plants that had arrived on their own terms, and that he had found places for, and he walked slowly to the eastern wall and looked at the trees. They were taller than he was now, and thicker at the trunk, and beginning to show in their shape the promise of what they were going to be, though still years from their full maturity. He stood with them for a long time. He put his hand on the bark of one, rough and beginning to furrow, still young, still in the process of becoming. And what he felt, to his own surprise, was not grief at leaving, and not grief at not seeing them come to be what they were going to be. What he felt was something that he could only describe as complete, not the completion of something finished, the completion of something that had given what it had to give, and that was ready, without difficulty, to let the giving continue in other hands. The river moves. The water is always new. The river is the river. Let us pause here for a moment. Shen and the trees he planted without needing to see them in their maturity. The question his teacher asked, when did you stop needing to see the end? Let it rest where it wants to rest in you, not as a question you need to answer tonight, as a quality of something, the particular quality of love that does not require its own presence in the outcome to be real. Let the body be still with it. When you are ready, we will continue together. Let us explore a story about what happens to the work that cannot be saved. There was a calligrapher, a monk named Lin, who had devoted 43 years of her life to the practice of writing in the old style. Every morning she rose before dawn and ground fresh ink on a stone that had been worn smooth by 40 years of the same slow circular motion, and took up the wolf hair brush her teacher had given her when she completed her initial training, and sat before the paper with the particular quality of attention that the practice required, which is not concentration exactly, not effort exactly, but something more like openness to what might arrive through the hands if the hands are properly prepared. She had come to calligraphy late. She had been a teacher of novices before she was a practitioner, teaching the formal elements of the tradition, the texts and ceremonies and structures of the communal life, for many years before she found herself, in her middle 40s, sitting across from an old calligrapher in the city and watching him write a single character, and feeling in the watching something she did not have a name for. It was not admiration for skill, though there was admiration. It was more like recognition, like the experience of seeing something done in the way you had not known you had always believed it should be done. The character that emerged from his brush moved in the way she had felt language should move. Not decoratively, not performed, but as the natural trace of something that had passed through a person who was fully present and fully skilled and fully open all at once. She studied with him for 4 years before he died, and then she continued alone, carrying what he had given her into the decades that followed. The tradition she practiced understood that there is an ideal form for each character, not a mechanical ideal, not a fixed shape that can be reproduced by copying, the way you might reproduce a signature or a logotype. Something more like an achieved balance, a moment when the relationship between the brush and the paper, and the ink, and the breath, and the quality of the practitioner's attention all align in a way that produces something complete. Practitioners know this, not as something they can arrange, but as something that occasionally arrives through them when the conditions are right. Most mornings, it does not arrive. On good mornings, it approaches. On very rare mornings, in a practice mature enough to have accumulated its own momentum, the character appears on the paper as it should be, and the practitioner knows it immediately, not as a judgment, not as evaluation, but in the hands, in the quality of the silence in the room, in a bodily recognition that is older and more certain than thought. In her 43rd year of practice, Lynn wrote a character that was the one. She knew it while she was writing it. The brush was moving as it should move, not as she was directing it to move, but as it moved when the practice was moving through her rather than being performed by her. The ink fell from the brush at the right pressure, the right speed, the right moment of release and rest. The paper received it as it should. The character that appeared on the page was, she understood with complete certainty and without any trace of pride, as close to its ideal form as she would come in this life. She had been moving toward this moment for 43 years. The moment had arrived. She set the brush down. She looked at the paper. She sat with what she was looking at. The room was very quiet. Outside, the courtyard was beginning to catch the first grey light before dawn. Inside, the character on the paper held everything she had spent 43 years learning to receive. And then her sleeve caught the edge of the inkstone as she shifted her weight, and the stone tipped, and the remaining ink, the ink she'd had ground that morning with 43 years of the same slow motion, poured across the paper and the character and covered it entirely before she could move. She sat very still. There was nothing to be done. The paper was black. The character was gone. Gone not into storage, not into uncertainty, gone completely, covered, irretrievable. No version of her had the power to undo what had happened in that moment, which had been ordinary and accidental and total in its consequence, the way only ordinary accidents can be. You have felt something adjacent to this, not necessarily in a studio or a practice, but the specific, airless quality of losing something irreplaceable in the moment before you have fully registered what you had, the thing that cannot be undone, the permanence of the accidental, which arrives without warning and without appeal, and is simply, absolutely, the new state of things, the ink on the paper, the words said in an argument that would have been better unsaid, the moment that passed while you were looking elsewhere, the door that closed before you reached it. These moments are not rare. Each one carries a specific shock, the shock of the world, demonstrating clearly and without sentiment that certain things are not reversible. She sat with the ruined paper for a long time. She did not immediately take out a new sheet and try to recreate what had been lost. She did not try to salvage the covered page. She sat with the specific quality of what had just happened, irreversible, complete, perfectly clear in its irreversibility, and let it be what it was, without the management that is usually applied so quickly to difficult things. Here is what she arrived at, slowly, across the hours that followed, in the way that understanding arrives when it is not being rushed toward. She could not grieve what she had written exactly because she had never had it. It had existed for perhaps 30 seconds on the paper. And in those 30 seconds, she had been aware of it, had known it, had recognized it, and then it was gone, and what remained was her memory of it, which was already, in the moments after, slightly different from the character itself in ways she could not have specified, but knew to be true. The memory was not the character. The character she was grieving was already a reconstruction, already the mind's version of what the hands had produced, shaped by everything that she wanted it to have been, and filtered through the shock of having lost it. She had been holding something already going. The ink simply made the going visible. What had not been lost 43 years. The practice, the 1,000 mornings of grinding ink and taking up the brush and meeting the paper with whatever quality of attention that morning provided, sometimes sharp and clears, sometimes heavy and distracted, sometimes simply the quality of an ordinary morning in a long practice. The accumulated depth of that practice, which was not in any of the papers she had written, but in the quality of presence she brought to writing, which was the same quality she brought to everything, which had been shaped by 43 years of returning to the brush every morning, regardless of what the previous morning had produced. She practiced for 19 more years. She never again wrote a character she would call the One. She wrote many that were close enough that other practitioners who saw them said they were among the finest examples of the form they had encountered. She wrote many that were ordinary, and many that were simply the honest work of a particular morning without distinction or arrival. Each of them was what the day produced. Each of them was the river in a different moment. And here is what the 19 years after the covered page revealed about the 43 years before it. The practice had never been about the arrived character. The arrived character was a gift the practice occasionally gave, and it was a real gift, and it had a different quality from the ordinary work. She knew this. She would not pretend otherwise, but the practice was not in service of the gift. The practice was the practice. The gift arrived the way anything arrives, the way anything through a medium that is properly prepared, not guaranteed, not coerced, simply made possible. The 43 years had made the gift possible, and the 43 years were the same with or without the gift. The gift confirmed something about the practice, but the practice did not need confirming. It had always been what it was, the thing she had chosen to give her life to, not because it would produce any particular outcome, but because it was what she was. The ink covered the page. The practice continued. These two things are related in a way that matters. The practice was not diminished by the loss of its highest moment, because the highest moment was never the point of the practice. The practice was the point of the practice. The morning was the point of the morning. The 43 years were the point of the 43 years. What arrived through them was what arrived, and what arrived was not more real, not more the practice, than the 1,000 ordinary mornings that had prepared the ground. The river she had loved for 62 years, the practice, the brush, the ink, the paper, the slow circular motion on the worn stone before dawn, the sitting with the steving, the moving of the hand in the way the practice had taught it to move, was the same river and never the same water, and she loved it completely and without grief right until the end. The river moves. The water is always new. The river is the river. Let us pause here for a moment. Lynn and the covered page and the practice that continued beyond the loss of its highest moment. The thing that was already moving away before you were fully aware of holding it. What you have lost, not because you failed to hold it, but because moving is what it does. Let the body rest with that, not as a thought to complete, but as a quality of presence, available, the way a river is available, whether or not you are attending to it. When you are ready, we will continue together. Let us explore a story about what remains after the sound has gone. In a monastery built into the side of a mountain at the edge of a pine forest, there was a bell that had been cast 400 years before the story begins. It was a large bell, the kind that requires several monks to set it ringing, struck with a wooden beam hung from a frame, its sound moving outward in every direction simultaneously. The sound traveled across the rooftops and through the courtyard and down the mountain path and across the valley below in waves of resonance that took longer to arrive at the far edge of the valley than at the near edge, so that the same bell, struck once, was heard at different moments across the landscape, the sound rippling outward like rings from a stone dropped in still water, arriving at each listener at the moment the distance required. The farmers in the valley heard it a full breath after the monks in the courtyard did. The sound was the same sound. The arrival was different. This is how waves travel. This is also how love travels. For 400 years, this bell had marked the rhythm of the monastery's day, the morning bell at first light, the midday bell, the bells for practice and for meals, and for the beginning and ending of ceremonies. The monks who lived at the monastery across those 4 centuries knew the bell so thoroughly, through such long proximity, that they had long since stopped noticing it as a thing separate from the day. It had become the structure inside which everything else occurred. Like the heartbeat that you only notice in its absence, the bell was not what they heard. It was the shape of the time in which they lived. The intervals between the bells were not silence. They were anticipation and memory, and the quiet aliveness of the space between two moments of sound. In the 437th year of the bell's life, it cracked, not dramatically, not in a moment of obvious event. The crack appeared over the course of a hard winter, a season of temperature swings more extreme than usual. The repeated freezing and thawing working on a small fault in the original casting that had been there since the bell was made. 400 years of patience in the metal, waiting for the right conditions. When spring came and the monks struck the bell at the morning hour, the sound that emerged was wrong. The bell still rang. It had not failed entirely, but the crack gave the tone an edge it had never had, a quality of fracture in the resonance that made the sound wrong in a way that everyone heard immediately and no one could unhear. The decision was made to retire the bell. A new bell would be ordered, a process requiring negotiation with craftsmen in the city, a long correspondence, months of waiting. In the meantime, the monastery would hold the rhythm of the day by other means. The internal sense of time that develops in people who have lived long enough in a structured community, the body's knowledge of when it is time to rise, to practice, to eat, to rest. The first morning without the bell was deeply strange, not because the monastery was noisier, it was quieter, but the quiet was a different quality of quiet. Not the silence that preceded the bell and followed the bell, the held breath quality of the intervals between one structuring sound and the next. Simply silence, unmarked, undivided. A silence that did not know where it was in the day. And the silence revealed something about the bell that 400 years of its presence had made invisible. The bell had not been marking the time. The bell had been making the time. The silence between the bells was not silence. It was anticipation. It was the pause of a breath between two heartbeats. The bell was the heartbeat. Without the bell, the silence had no shape. The young novices found this disorienting, as young people find the loss of structure disorienting. Not because they are weak, but because structure is what the young are still learning to hold internally. And to have the external container removed is to discover that the internal one is not yet self-sufficient. The older monks found it revealing. The thing that is always present becomes visible only in its absence. A teacher named Brother Kai, who had been at the monastery for 40 years and had therefore heard the bell twice daily for 40 years, more than 29,000 times, found himself on the third morning of the bell's absence, sitting in the courtyard at the hour that had always been the morning bell hour, and simply sitting, not in formal practice, not reviewing or planning, simply sitting in the place and the hour where the bell had always sounded. With the quality of attention the bell had always called up in him. He had arrived at the courtyard by habit, by the deep groove of 40 years of going to the courtyard at this hour, and there was no bell, and he stayed anyway, and he discovered something he had not expected. He could hear the bell, not in any supernatural sense, not as a sound in the air, but in the way you can hear a melody you know very well if you are placed in the silence where that melody would have sounded, the pattern of it present in the body, in the nervous system, in the accumulated shape of every time you have received. 40 years of morning bell had worked its way into the structure of how he inhabited time, so that the silence at the bell hour was not empty of the bell. It carried the bell's shape inside it. The shape was, in some sense, that was not metaphorical, the bell. He sat with this over several mornings. He began to understand something about what the bell had been doing for 400 years. Something beyond marking the hours. It had been accumulating itself in the people who heard it. Every monk who had lived at this monastery long enough carried the bell within them, not as a memory that could be recalled and described in the way you might describe the color of a room, but as a rhythm, a pattern, a quality of attention that had been called into being again and again at the same moments, until the calling and the response were no longer separable. The bell had made itself permanent in the most impermanent possible way, by sounding repeatedly until it became part of the structure of the people it had sounded for. 400 years of this. Generations of monks who had come to the monastery and been shaped by the rhythm of the bell, who had carried that rhythm into whatever they became and wherever they went after leaving. The bell had not stayed in the bell. It had moved continuously with every monk who ever left the monastery into the world, shaping how those people experienced the passage of time, what they felt at morning and midday and the hours of transition, the particular quality of presence the bell had trained in them, which remained long after the bell itself was out of hearing. You have felt this, the specific experience of a sound or a smell or a quality of light at a certain hour that calls back something so completely that you are briefly, for the duration of a breath, for the length of a recognition, in the presence of what is no longer there. The song that brings someone back, not as a memory, but as a presence. The smell of something that is not about the food, but about a specific hour in a specific place, in a specific season of your life. The quality of late afternoon light in a certain month that belongs entirely to a time that is gone. These are not ordinary memories. They are something more structural. The way the thing you loved worked itself into the fabric of how you experience the world and remains there, doing its work, long after the thing itself has passed. The new bell arrived the following spring. When it was first struck, the sound was different. Same function, same purpose, a different voice. The community listened to it carefully in those first weeks. The way you listen to something you are learning to recognize. The new bell had not yet accumulated itself into anyone. It was beginning. It would take decades, perhaps a century, before it was as thoroughly inside the community as the old bell had been, but it had begun. And Brother Kai, hearing it ring at the morning hour, felt two things simultaneously that he would not have expected to be able to feel at the same time. The strangeness of the new sound, which was not yet his, and the particular completeness of what had preceded it. The 400 years of the old bell's sounding, which had not been wasted, which had not dissolved, which was present in every person who had ever heard it and gone on to inhabit their life with the quality of attention it had called forth. The river moved. The sound changed. The sounding continued. The river moves. The water is always new. The river is the river. Let us pause here for a moment. Brother Kai, and the bell-shaped silence, and what 400 years of sounding had made permanent by being impermanent. What has worked its way into the structure of how you receive the world, from the things and people you have loved long enough to carry, the bell in the body, the pattern in the silence. Let the breath find that. Simply breathe. Simply be here. When you are ready, we will continue together. Let us explore a story about two ways of trying to hold a river still. Two brothers inherited their father's house at the edge of a village when their father died in the winter of their middle years. The father had been a woodworker, a careful, patient craftsman who had spent 40 years making things by hand, things meant to last, things that carried in their surfaces the evidence of being made with attention and time. The house itself was a woodworker's house. The smell of cedar and pine had worked into the walls and the floors and the particular quality of light in the main room. The father had built much of the house himself, adding and refining over the decades as his craft deepened and the family's needs changed. He had not been a man of many words, and the house was his vocabulary. The way the kitchen was placed to catch the morning sun, the weight of the doors, the fit of everything against everything else, the sense throughout the house of someone who understood the relationship between materials and time. The house was, in the way of things made by careful hands over a long time, a kind of self-portrait, not metaphorically. Directly, this wood was chosen and cut and fitted by these hands. That window faces west because he designed it to face west, so that the afternoon light would come in at this angle, which is the angle he preferred. The elder brother was named Ren. He did not return to the house after the funeral. He could not. The house was too thoroughly. The father, too dense with him. The smell and the light and the specific sound the kitchen door made when it caught slightly on the frame in the way it had always caught, and the father had always meant to fix. Being in the house was not like remembering the father. It was like being in the father. And Ren had found in the weeks after the death that he could not be in that much of his father without it costing more than he could currently spend. So he managed the practical matters by letter and instruction, and he did not return. He told himself it was not avoidance. He told himself many things. The younger brother was named Tao. He returned constantly. Every month, sometimes more often in the difficult first year, he would take the half-day journey to the village and walk up the familiar path and let himself into the house and sit in the main room in the afternoon light, in the chair the father had always used, and watch the light come through the west windows at the angle that had always been his father's light. He was preserving the house exactly as it had been. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. Not the position of any object on the workbench. Not the tools on their hooks. Not the unfinished piece his father had been working on in the last weeks before the illness prevented him from working. which sat on the bench in the precise configuration his father had left it, waiting under a cloth Tao refreshed regularly, for hands that would never return to it. He was keeping the father there. That was the function the preservation served, not the preservation of objects, but the preservation of presence. As long as the house looked exactly as it had looked in the last hours his father had been in it, the father was, in some sense, Tao could not articulate, but absolutely felt, not entirely gone. Neither brother was wrong exactly. They were each doing what they could do with the weight they were carrying, which was real and which was heavy, and which neither of them had chosen. But both of them, in their different ways, were trying to stop the river. Ren was trying to stop it by refusing to enter the water. Tao was trying to stop it by refusing to let the water move. A traveling monk named Brother Fang passed through the village and was invited to dinner by Ren, who had heard that Brother Fang was the kind of person who sometimes said useful things. At dinner, Ren spoke about the house and his inability to return. He spoke carefully, with the particular restraint of someone who has spent so much time thinking about something that the thinking has itself become a kind of captivity. Brother Fang listened without rushing him. When Ren finished, he said, "What are you afraid you will feel if you go back?" Ren said that it will be over. Brother Fang said, "It is already over." Ren looked at him. This was not comforting in the way he had been hoping for, which is perhaps a sign that it was true, in a way that comforting things generally are not. Brother Fang said, "I do not mean this coldly. The father is gone. That is complete. The house remains, and the house is not the father, though the father is in the house everywhere. By staying away from the house, you are attempting to hold the ending in its undone state. You are trying to keep the ending from being real by never fully arriving at it. But the ending was done on the morning he died. The house is a place where the father was, and there is something in that place that has something to give you if you will let it." Several days later, Brother Fang visited Tao at the house. He sat in the main room and watched the afternoon light come through the west windows and understood immediately what Tao was doing there. He was keeping the shape of the father's absence so precise and so unchanged that the absence itself had become a presence. The house was a museum. The father was being preserved in formaldehyde, kept exactly in the configuration of the last day, unchanged because to change anything felt like agreeing to a second death, a death of the father's presence that would be, in a way Tao could not fully examine his own doing. Brother Fang asked Tao what his father would have done in the workshop if he were here now. Tao said he would have been building something. He was always building something. Even in the last weeks when he was too tired to stand, he would come and sit at the bench and look at the unfinished pieces and think about what they needed. Brother Fang said, "And what are you building?" Tao had no answer. Brother Fang said, "Your father built this house to be lived in. A house that is not lived in is not being loved. It is being preserved, and preserved things are not alive. By keeping the house exactly as it was, you are refusing to let it be what it was made to be. You are loving the form of your father and refusing his function, which was to build things for people to live in. When the brothers sat together some weeks later, which required some arrangement, some arriving at the same place with the same willingness to be in the difficulty at the same time, Brother Fang said what he had understood about both of them. He said, "Your father moved through this house for 40 years. He left his passage everywhere in it, and the passage was his. The house is the riverbed. It is shaped by what moved through it, but the water has moved on. A riverbed is not the same as the water that shaped it. You can love the riverbed. You can live in the riverbed, use it, change it as life changes, carry the Father in you rather than in the unchanged rooms. The cedar smell will fade. That is not failure. That is cedar. The west light will remain as long as the windows remain. And one day, those too will change. This is not loss of the Father. This is the riverbed continuing to be a riverbed, shaped by what passed through it, ready to receive what comes next. You have felt this, the pull between the two brothers, the one who cannot return because returning would make the ending real, the one who cannot stop returning because the returning holds the ending at bay. Perhaps you have been Ren, staying away from the place, the conversation, the memory, because to enter it fully would be to confirm something you are not ready to confirm. Perhaps you have been Tao, returning over and over to the preserved shape of what was, keeping it unchanged, because as long as the shape is maintained, the departure is not quite complete. Most people have been both at different times with different losses. The two brothers are not failures of grief. They are grief. Two of the forms grief takes when it does not yet know that the river can be loved as a river. The ways we try to keep the river from moving. We have not loved badly by trying this. We have loved, and loving is what produces the trying. But the river does not hold still for love, and the love does not require it to. The river moves. The water is always new. The river is the river. The two brothers are the river too. What passed between them, the Father, the house, the 40 years of cedar and light shaped them as the water shapes the stone, and they will carry that shaping forward into everything they build and tend and love from here. The riverbed continues. Let us pause here for a moment. Ren and Tao and the house and the two ways of holding a river still. The riverbed shaped by 40 years of careful hands. What you have been unable to return to. What you have been unable to leave. The river in the riverbed. Simply breathe. Simply hear. When you are ready, we will continue together. Let us explore a story about what survives the burning. A teacher named Wei had kept notebooks for 42 years. Not a single continuous record. The practice had evolved across the decades. In the early years, he had written in whatever came to hand, margins of texts, loose papers, organized and reorganized as they multiplied. By his 40s, he had developed a system, small notebooks of a specific size, ruled by his own hand, each covering approximately one season of the practice. By the time of the fire, He had filled many hundreds of these notebooks with observations, questions, records of conversations that had mattered, passages from texts he was working closely with, and his own attempts to articulate what the practice was teaching him at different moments from different angles. Some of the notebooks were dense and urgent, the writing of someone in the middle of discovering something. Some were sparse, a few lines per page, the widely spaced observations of someone who had learned to wait for what mattered. All of them together represented not a single idea, but a lifetime of thinking, which is a different thing from a conclusion, not an arrival, but the ongoing activity of a mind that had spent 42 years trying to understand what the tradition was pointing at. The notebooks were not a diary. They were more like the working notes of someone in the middle of making something. Not the finished thing, but the evidence of the making, the scaffolding that a building requires while it is being built. He had never thought of the notebooks as the work itself. He thought of them as his thinking, the external form of an interior process, the way the marks on a stone reveal the direction of the water that carved them. He did not intend the fire. A coal in the night brazier, inadequately banked, fallen to the wooden floor, smoldering through the small hours and catching properly in the hour before dawn when the room was empty and the air was dry. By the time anyone smelled smoke and raised the alarm, the room that held the notebooks was past saving. 42 years. Gone. You have felt something near this. Perhaps not a literal fire, but the loss of something that represented accumulated time, accumulated work, accumulated thinking. The specific quality of irreversible loss of something built slowly. Something that required years to make and cannot be remade because the years themselves are gone. The sense of the floor dropping out from under, a substantial part of who you understood yourself to be. Brother Wei sat in the garden for 3 days, not in meditation, not in practice, simply sitting with whatever was true, while the community quietly left him to it. On the 4th day, he asked a student to bring paper and a brush. The student brought them and set them beside him and waited. Brother Wei sat with the paper for a long time. He did not write. The student eventually asked, "What are you waiting for?" Wei said, "I am trying to find what I know." The student waited. Wei said, "I thought I would be able to find it." The notebooks were 42 years. I thought the most important things, the things I returned to most often, the things I worked on longest, would be available to me as content I could write down. But I find they are not available in that form. The student asked, "Then they are gone?" Brother Wei looked at the paper before him. He said, "I do not think they are gone. I think they have become me. I think I spent 42 years writing things down so that I could become them. And having become them, I no longer have them as separate things. I cannot write down what I know, because what I know is not in the form of things that can be written down. It is in this form." He indicated himself, his hands, his posture, the quality of how he was sitting with the difficult morning. It will come out in this form. In the quality of silence, I offer someone in difficulty. In the way I respond to a question from the edge of my understanding, rather than its center. This was what the fire had revealed. The notebooks had been the process of building something, the scaffolding the building required, while it was going up. And the building, once standing, had no further need of the scaffolding. The scaffolding had burned. The building remained, not as catalogued content, not as 42 notebooks of things he could cite or quote or refer to, as the person who had done the 42 years of work, who had been shaped by that work in the way a riverbed is shaped by the water that runs through it. The form of every season of moving water pressed into the stone, permanent, carrying the history of the river in the structure of the ground. In the months that followed, as he returned to teaching and found that he could teach, could sit with students in difficulty and find that what he needed was available to him, more immediate than notes, and more responsive than anything written could have been. He understood something else about the fire. The notebooks had made him what he was. Being what he was, he no longer needed the notebooks. They had carried him to this shore and dissolved in the carrying. The shore remained. This is not to say the loss was nothing. The loss was real. There were things in those notebooks that had been beautiful as things, moments when the thinking and the writing had arrived together in a form worth keeping for its own sake. Those were gone. The beauty of them was gone. That was a true loss, and it remained one. But the teaching in the notebooks was not in the notebooks. It had never been in the notebooks. It had been in the 42 years of returning to the practice of thinking carefully and writing honestly and returning to what had been written and thinking again. The notebooks were the river. The teacher was the riverbed the river had shaped. The river was gone. The riverbed remained. The river moves. The water is always new. The river is the river. The notebooks were the river. Way was the riverbed. This is not a consolation, it is a description. And descriptions, when they are accurate, have their own kind of weight, heavier than consolation and more durable. Let us pause here for a moment. Way and the fire and the 42 years and the building that stood after the scaffolding burned. What you have accumulated that has become you rather than remaining separate from you, that has become the quality of how you inhabit your days rather than a set of things you know, the river that has moved through you and shaped you and moved on, simply here, simply breathing. When you are ready, we will continue together. Let us explore a story about what it means to keep giving away what you love. An elder monk named May began, in the last years of her life, to give away everything she owned. She had not owned much. The monastic life is not a life of accumulation, but 50 years in community had gathered around her the small things that gather even in a monastery, the things that had found their way to her through use and gift, and the ordinary process by which objects become attached to particular people through long, habitual proximity. A bowl she had used for morning tea since her 3rd year, replaced once when the original cracked and found again in the same simple form. A set of texts she had worked with closely enough that her annotations lived in the margins. The careful handwriting of a young student becoming, across the decades, the more fluid and abbreviated marks of someone who no longer needed to write everything down, and a folded piece of paper on which a teacher she had loved had written a single line many years before his death that she had carried with her through all the changes since. She began giving these things away without ceremony and without particular order. The bowl went to a novice who had mentioned with no emphasis that she found the morning tea difficult to manage in a cup too large for her hands. May had noticed this, and the following morning had simply given the novice her bowl without explanation, without the novice understanding what the bowl was or the length of its history. The texts went to a young teacher working with the same materials May had worked with for decades, who she judged would use the margin notes as she had intended, not as authority, but as the record of one person's thinking useful to another person's thinking, the two becoming a kind of conversation across time. The folded paper was last. She held it longest, not because she could not give it away. She knew she would give it away, had known since the beginning of the giving, but because she wanted to give it to the right person. The line the teacher had written on it had meant different things to her at different times across many decades, and she wanted it to go to someone for whom it would do the same. A student came to her with a genuine question about impermanence, not an academic question, but a question that came from having lost something recently and not knowing what to do with the weight of the loss. She listened to the student for a long time, she thought. Then she unfolded the paper and read the line to the student. The student asked what it meant. May said, "It has meant different things to me at different times. I am giving it to you now because I believe it will mean different things to you too." And that is exactly what it should do. The student received the paper with the particular solemnity of someone who understands they have received something whose full meaning they do not yet have access to. Here is what May was doing, and here is what she was not doing. She was not performing non-attachment. She was not demonstrating that she had achieved the condition. The tradition sometimes points toward where things simply do not matter. The things mattered. They had mattered for decades, and they still mattered. She was giving them away not because she had stopped loving them, but because she loved them enough to want them to continue doing their work, to be held by other hands, to accumulate meaning in other lives, to do more in more years than one life and one pair of hands could provide for them. Only what you love is worth giving. What you do not love, you simply get rid of. What you love, you give, which is not the ending of love, but love's desire for the thing to go on, to keep being what it is, in whatever hands are ready to receive it. Giving is not loss. Giving is continuation. May died the following spring, on a morning when the plum trees in the courtyard were at their peak. She had very little when she died. The bowl was in the novice's hands every morning. The texts were in the young teacher's room, new margin notes accumulating alongside May's, the conversation continuing. The folded paper was in the student's keeping, having already meant 3 different things on its way to meaning more. The objects were the river. May had moved through them, and they through her, and the river was still moving, still arriving at new people in new conditions, with the same unhurried generosity of water, finding the lowest point and filling it. The river moves. The water is always new. The river is the river. Let us pause here for a moment. May and the bowl and the texts and the folded paper and the giving. That was not detachment, but continuation. What you have loved, that will one day pass into other hands. What you have already given, that is still out there, still doing its work. Let the body rest with that, without needing to see where it goes. When you are ready, we will continue together. Let us explore a story about what it means to keep coming back to something that is slowly leaving. There was a monk named Song who had been visiting the same pine tree since his 31st year. The tree was not remarkable in the way that notable things are remarkable. It was large, ancient, its trunk thick enough that two people could not have reached around it and touched hands on the other side, its bark deeply furrowed in the way of old pines, each furrow carrying within it the history of a century of seasons. It stood alone on a promontory above the monastery, on a small flat area of stone where the trail bent to give the first view of the valley below. It was the kind of tree that becomes part of a landscape so thoroughly that imagining the landscape without it becomes impossible. Song had come to it in his 31st year without particular intention. He had been walking the trail and had stopped at the promontory as one stops at promontories to take in the view, and had leaned against the tree in the natural way of leaning against large trees. And he had found in the leaning something he had not been expecting. Not comfort exactly, not beauty exactly, a quality of presence. The tree's enormous, unhurried aliveness, so different from human aliveness, from its quickness and its anxiety and its continuous demand, felt like a different category of being. A presence that was doing nothing except being what it was, fully, in the specific hour of the specific day, without any management of what it was. He came back the following week, and the week after. Over the years, the visits became a rhythm, not scheduled precisely, but consistent enough that the tree had become part of the internal landscape of his practice. The place he came when he needed to be reminded of something he could never quite name, but always found there. In his 58th year at the monastery, his 27th year of visiting the tree, he noticed that the crown was thinning, not dramatically, not in a way that would have been visible to someone who had not been looking at the same crown for 27 years. But he had been, and he noticed, fewer needles in the upper branches this year than last, more gaps in the canopy, a cluster of small branches at the top that bore nothing. He stood beneath the tree in the early morning and looked up at the changed crown and understood, with the certainty of someone who has been attending to something long enough to notice gradual change, that the tree was dying, not quickly. It was a very old tree, and old trees die slowly, but the process had begun, the way all endings begin, not with a declaration, but with a quality of difference in what had seemed permanent. He sat with the tree that morning for longer than usual. He tried to understand what he was feeling, and what he was feeling was grief. not abstract grief, not philosophical acknowledgement of impermanence, specific, bodily, present grief. The particular grief of watching something you love begin its ending, while the ending is slow enough that you will be present for each of its stages. He thought of the teaching. He knew the words of the teaching about impermanence. He had been teaching those words for 30 years. The words were not, on this particular morning, what he needed. What he needed, he found by staying. He stayed with the tree, and he let the grief be what it was. Not managed, not translated into something the teaching could address, not consoled by what he knew about the nature of things. He let the tree be dying without requiring it to not be dying. He let the grief be grief, and in the not requiring, something in the quality of his presence with the tree changed. He was no longer at the tree for what the tree gave him. He was at the tree to be with the tree, to accompany it, to sit beside something in the long, slow process of its ending and offer. In whatever way a person can offer something to a tree, the quality of not looking away, not the quality of acceptance that is performed, not the philosophical calm that is maintained by effort. Simply here, present, looking at what is true, staying. He came back the following week, the week after. For 11 more years he visited the tree as it died, slowly, progressively, the bare branches multiplying, the living wood retreating toward the lower trunk. In the 9th of those 11 years, the upper half of the tree was entirely dead, while the lower half still produced a narrow circle of green at the base, a ring of life at the bottom, the dead crown reaching upward above it, which had a beauty that had no other name than the beauty of something that has given everything it had and is giving the last. In the 11th year, the tree died completely. Song visited the dead tree for 4 more years. A winter storm eventually brought down the main trunk, and what remained was a stump, and he visited the stump. He brought students sometimes to sit with the stump, not to explain it, not to use it to illustrate a teaching, simply to sit with what had been, with the material fact of something very old and very alive that had, over a very long time, and in full view of anyone willing to look, done what everything does. A student asked him once, on one of these visits, "Why do you still come here?" Song looked at the stump. He said, "The tree is here. The aliveness is somewhere else. But the tree is here." The student asked, "Is that enough?" Song said, "It is everything. You have felt something in the direction of this. The experience of staying with something that is going, the person in the season of ending, the relationship in its final form, the version of yourself that you know with the honest attention of someone who has been watching something long enough to see its changes, is not going to be exactly this anymore." And the question that arrives in that knowing, what does it mean to stay present with something that is leaving? It means what Song did, not looking away, not managing the grief into something more acceptable, not translating the dying tree into a lesson that makes the dying less true, simply being there, simply accompanying, simply letting the tree be the tree, in whatever stage of itself it is in, all the way to the stump and beyond. The river moves. The water is always new. The river is the river. Let us pause here for a moment. Song and the pine tree, and the 11 years of watching, and the stump he still visited. The quality of staying with what is leaving. This is worth sitting with a little longer tonight, because it is perhaps the hardest thing the 7 stories ask. It is easier to plant the tree for someone you will not meet. That asks something of the timeline, of the ego, of the need to be in the outcome, but it does not ask you to stand with loss in real time. It is easier to continue the practice after the covered page. That asks you to separate the practice from any single result of the practice, which is difficult but can be learned. It is easier to hear the bell in the silence, or to release the preserved house, or to understand what survived the fire, or to give away what you love. What song did is harder, because it is longer and more sustained. It is one thing to understand impermanence in the moment of loss, when the truth of it is undeniable, and the mind has no choice but to accept what is in front of it. It is another thing entirely to understand it across 11 years of watching, which is what Song was asked to do. Not one moment of loss, but 1,000 mornings of arriving at the promontory and looking honestly at what the tree had become since the last time he looked. Not the mercy of a single clean ending, but the long accumulation of small endings, each of which was also a continuation, which is in some ways harder than the final ending, because it asks you to keep feeling, to keep attending, to keep loving something in the act of its gradual departure. You have felt this. The specific texture of loving something through its long, slow change, which is not at all like loving something that is stable. It requires a different quality of attention, not the sustained gaze that can hold a fixed thing, but the kind of attention that can hold a moving thing that updates continuously without losing the thread of recognition. That can say, this is still the thing I love, and also, this is different from what it was, and hold both simultaneously without the difference becoming a reason to stop loving, or the continuation becoming a defense against seeing the change. This is what the teachers were pointing at, not a practice you adopt in response to impermanence, but a quality of presence that arises when you stop fighting impermanence. The fight is exhausting. Everyone who has sustained it for any length of time knows this. The effort of holding the thing in the shape it was, or preemptively withdrawing from it so its changing cannot reach you, or finding some philosophical position that puts you at a safe distance from the moving, all of these are effort, and they are tiring, and they produce, in the person who sustains them, a particular kind of weariness that has nothing to do with the actual difficulty of the situation, and everything to do with the difficulty of fighting what is. Song, sitting at the base of a dying pine tree for 11 years, was not fighting. He was not practicing acceptance in the sense of suppressing what he actually felt. He felt the grief. The grief was real and present throughout. He was simply not using the grief as a reason to stop coming. The grief and the coming were the same thing. The loving and the watching the loved thing change were the same thing. He had found the version of love that does not require its object to hold still, which is the only version of love that can actually be sustained, because everything that can be loved is also moving. Let that quality rest in the body now, not as a concept to grasp, as a quality of presence, available, the way a river is always available to whatever comes to it, the quality of not looking away, the quality of staying. Let the breath be slow. Let the night be the night. When you are ready, we will continue together. 7 stories have arrived tonight. Let them rest where they have settled. They do not need to be organized by anything you do. They were always connected, have been from the beginning, arriving from different angles toward the same open ground. The same river approached from 7 different points along its bank. Shen, who planted trees he would never see in maturity, and found in the planting a form of love that had released itself from the need to witness its own completion. Lin, who lost the achieved moment to a tilted inkstone and discovered that what she had loved for 43 years was not the arrived moment, but the practice that made arriving possible. The river, not the water in it on any particular morning. Brother Kai, who heard the cracked bell fall silent and found that 40 years of sounding had made the bell permanent in the most impermanent possible way, by becoming part of the structure of the people it had shaped. Ren and Dao, and the house at the edge of the village, and the 2 different ways a person can try to hold a river still. The one who refused to enter the water, the one who refused to let the water move, and the traveling monk, who understood that both of them were trying the same impossible thing, and that the house they were so carefully loving was a riverbed waiting to be lived in. Wei, who lost 42 years of notebooks to a single cold night, and found, in the particular silence that followed, that the notebooks had always been the scaffolding, and the teacher was the building that stood without them. Mei, who kept giving away what she loved with increasing clarity, that the giving was not the ending of love, but its truest direction, continuation, not loss. And Song, who visited a dying tree for 11 years, and a dead tree for 4 more years, and a stump beyond that, and who called this everything, and who was right. The teaching beneath all 7 is the same teaching, one of the oldest in the tradition, one of the most consistently misunderstood. The Pali word is anicca, impermanence, the simple and total observation that everything that arises passes. Every phenomenon, without exception, from the oldest mountain to the briefest moment of recognition, everything that comes into being passes. This is not a warning, not a cause for grief, not an instruction to love less. Here is what it is, a description of the medium in which love occurs. You do not love things despite the fact that they change. You love things that are alive, and what it means to be alive is to change. The river is not less beautiful because it moves. The blossom is not less itself because it falls. The bell is not diminished by the crack that ends its sounding. It is the bell completely, in all its stages, including the last. The tree is not less the tree in its dying. Song called it everything, and he was right. What the teachers were pointing at with anicca is not the instruction to love, less but the invitation to love more honestly, to love the river as a river, to stop asking the water to hold still, and find that what you love has always been the river itself, the moving, the aliveness, the continuous changing that is what being alive actually is. You were never loving a fixed thing. You were loving a living thing. Living things move. Shen understood this when he planted trees for someone he would never meet. He was not loving trees that would be there in 30 years. He was loving trees, living things, changing things, and the love did not require the outcome. Lin understood this when the ink covered the page and the 43 years of practice continued. She had not loved the arrived moment. She had loved the practice that made arriving possible. The practice was the river. The arrived moment was water that had passed through. Kai understood this when the bell-shaped silence revealed what 400 years of sounding had built inside the people who heard it. The bell had always been most itself in the people it shaped. The cracking was the bell completing what it had always been doing. The two brothers understood it, slowly, with help, when they saw that their father was not in the preserved house. Their father was in the riverbed of their lives, in the quality of care he had brought to 40 years of building, in the shape the river of him had pressed into everything it had moved through, including them. The house was a place the river had passed through. The river had moved on. The riverbed remained. Wei understood it when the fire showed him that the notebooks had been the scaffold and the teacher was the building. The river had moved through the notebooks for 42 years and shaped him, and then the river had moved on, and what remained was the shape. May understood it when she gave away what she loved and found that the giving was not the ending of loving, but its truest direction. The river of each beloved object still moving through new hands, doing the work it had been made to do. Song understood it over 11 years and 4 more and a stump, when he learned that being with something that is leaving is not loss but accompaniment, the final form of the love that does not require the thing it loves to hold still, the love that can call the dying tree everything and be right, the love that is not diminished by the dying but made, in some sense, that takes years to understand, more complete by having stayed. All of this is the teaching, not learned in an evening, not applied by morning, something that enters through stories and settles slowly in whatever part of you was for it, and works its way deeper over years, the way a river works its way deeper into a valley, not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily and with the patience of something that has all the time it needs. There is a practical question that arises here, and it is worth addressing before we arrive at rest, because it may be arising in you already. The question is, what do I do with this? Tomorrow, when the thing I am afraid of losing is still there, still the particular shape it is, still moving in the ways I cannot control. What do I do differently? The honest answer is probably not much that is outwardly different. The teaching is not a program of action. It does not produce a list of practices to follow. What it produces when it settles is a quality of attention, the quality of looking at what you love with the eyes of someone who sees the river rather than the water, and this quality of attention changes not what you do, but how it feels to do it. The love is the same love. The fear may still be present. The teaching does not eliminate fear, it contextualizes it. The loss, when it comes, will still be loss. The teaching does not promise otherwise. It promises only that love does not have to end where loss begins, that you can love the river all the way through its changing, that the love and the grief can coexist without the grief invalidating the love, or the love requiring you to pretend the grief is not real. Shen left the monastery and the trees he had planted, and the love he had for the trees did not end at the monastery gate. It went with him. It was inside him, in the quality of attention he brought to whatever he tended next, in the expanded timeline he carried, in the understanding that the thing you love does not need you in the outcome to have been truly and completely loved by you. Lin set down the brush for the last time and died, eventually, in the late years of a long practice, and the practice went on in every person she had ever taught, and in the quality of attention she had moved through the world with for 62 years, which had changed every encounter she'd had in ways that could not be traced, but were real. Brother Kai left the monastery eventually, as monks do, and carried the bell-shaped pattern of his 40 years in a particular quality of morning alertness, a particular capacity to hear what was present in the silence, that no one around him could have identified as coming from a bell he had heard more than 20,000 times in a monastery on a mountain. He was the bell. The bell had moved. The two brothers eventually lived in the house, not because they had resolved the loss, not because grief had ended and they were ready, but because the river does not wait for you to be ready, and Brother Fang's questions had opened something in them both, and the opening was enough to begin. The house changed. They changed. Their father remained in the riverbed of everything he had touched, which was them, and through them, everything they would go on to touch. Wei taught for many more years without his notebooks, and was, those who came to him said, more present in his teaching than he had ever been, less defended by the apparatus of what he knew, more available to what was actually happening in the room between a student in difficulty and a teacher, who had nothing to offer but the quality of a very long practice that had turned itself entirely into presence. May was gone but not gone. She was in the novice's hands at the morning tea. She was in the margin notes, and the conversation the margin notes were having with the young teacher's new margin notes. And in the teacher, the young teacher was becoming through the long work of that conversation. She was in the student who carried the folded paper, and in whatever the student would pass on in turn, not knowing it had come from May, not needing to know, the river moving without keeping records of its own passage. Song died some years after the stump, in a season of early frost, with the kind of completeness that comes to people who have spent their lives arriving, again and again, at the specific place where they are, without requiring it to be other than what it is. He was not less sad about dying than anyone else. He was simply not surprised by it. He had been visiting the truth of it for decades, in the form of a pine tree on a promontory above a valley, in the particular quality of early morning on a mountain where the air is clear and the things that are true are very clear, and there is nowhere to put a comfortable distance between you and them. All of them are still in motion. All of them are the river. And you are the river too. Everything that has moved through you has shaped you in the way the water shapes the stone. And the stone carries the river in its form, long after the river has moved downstream, and anyone who looks at the stone carefully enough can read in it the river's history. You have been shaped by what you have loved. This is not a wound. This is the riverbed. You are not afraid of loss because you love too much. You are afraid because you love truly. And what tonight offers, not as instruction, not as something to apply, is the slow, irreversible shift that happens when you stay with the stories long enough for the stories to do what stories do. The shift is not the ending of fear. The shift is the widening of what love is understood to be able to include. Love that includes the change. Love that does not require the river to stop. Love that can sit with the dying tree and call it everything. The river is still moving. It has been moving through all of these hours and all of these stories. It will move through the night while you sleep. It will be there when you wake, different and the same as it has always been. Let the stories settle now. All 7. The garden and the trees, the covered page, the bell in the silence, the 2 brothers and the house, the fire and the notebooks, the giving that was continuation, the monk and the dying tree. Let them find their places in whatever part of you is open to receiving them. The settling is not your work. It is what happens when the motion stops. And the motion is stopping now. The long motion of the day. The particular motion of carrying something you are afraid to lose. Let it slow. Let the body begin to release. No sequence and no method. Simply notice where something is held and let the holding ease. Not by forcing. Forcing is more holding. By withdrawing the effort that has been so continuous, it has stopped feeling like effort. The shoulders, let them drop. Not pushed down, simply released, finding the place they go when no one is asking anything of them. The weight of the day falling away from them. The shoulders belonging to the bed, to the dark, to the quiet. Let them settle. The jaw, the place where what cannot be said accumulates. The swallowed responses, the words that formed and were redirected, the tension of monitoring what is expressed. Let a small space open between the back teeth. Let the jaw be heavy. Let the breath find the small opening and move through it. You don't have to say anything here. You don't have to be understood. You can simply be heavy in the dark with whatever is true. The hands, let them open. Whatever they have been holding, the real and the metaphorical, the day and the ongoing concern and the things you have been trying to keep from slipping. Let the hands be open in the dark, palms upward if that is comfortable, receiving the air and offering nothing in return, simply open. The river does not need you to hold it. The river knows the way. Let the hands rest, the neck, the place where effort lives so often that you may not have noticed it there. The slight forward lean, the subtle tightening that accumulates across a day of attending, managing, monitoring. Let the head rest fully into whatever is beneath it. Let the neck be long and easy. Let the weight of the head be received by what holds it, which is doing so without effort, which has always been doing so. The space behind the eyes, where the thinking runs, the continuous low processing, the inventory of tomorrow, the unfinished calculations of what might happen and what should be done. Let it slow, not stopped. The mind does what it does. Simply let the effort ease. Let the spaces between thoughts grow a little longer. Let those spaces be welcome. Let them be the silence between the bells, not empty but shaped, not absent but waiting in the quiet way of things that have always been present. The chest, the place where what cannot be named lives, the weight that is not quite sadness and not quite fear, but is something in the family of both, the weight that brought you here tonight. Let it be what it is. Let the chest be tight if it is tight. Let the breath be soft around whatever is held there. Sometimes the opening arrives on its own when the permission to be closed is given. When you stop trying to fix it and simply let it be the shape it is, which is the shape of someone who loves something and knows the loving is not guaranteed. This is not a flaw. This is the evidence of the love. Let it rest here exactly as it is. Breathe in, not as technique, simply a breath that is, for this moment, slightly more conscious and slightly more full than the one before. Let it reach the lower body, the belly, the back, the wide space behind the ribs. Let it be gentle in whatever places have been tight. And release. Long exhale. Let it carry whatever it carries. The held words, the small griefs, the ordinary weights of a day in a life that involves loving things that move. The body has always known how to do this. It has been doing this since before you were aware of it. It does not need your direction to breathe. It does not need your permission to rest. It knows what to do in the dark. Trust it. The breath knows the way. Let it go where it goes. You are not going anywhere tonight. The river is moving without your help and without your attention, as it has always moved. You do not need to manage it tonight. You do not need to hold it, or release it, or understand it. You need only to be here, in this breath, in this room, in the specific quiet of this particular night that is now and not later and not before. Some of you are already at the edge of sleep. Let yourselves go there. The stories will be in you wherever you go. They have already done what stories do, worked their way into whatever part of you was open, settled into the places where they fit, resting now alongside everything else you carry. They will continue their quiet work in the dark, without any management from you. It is worth knowing, before sleep takes you, that the settling is not something you do. It is something that is done to you by the stories in the hours and days and weeks after they are received. You may wake tomorrow and feel that tonight made no difference, that the weight is the same, the fear is the same, the thing you love is no more secure than it was. This is fine. This is how the teaching travels. Not through immediate transformation, not through the experience of sudden peace, but through accumulation. The way a river shapes a valley, not in a day, but in the patient work of seasons, the steady wearing of stone by water, the gradual deepening of the channel. Tonight was one season. The river is still moving. The shaping is already happening. You may find it in unexpected places. In a moment, 2 weeks from now, when you are with the person you are afraid of losing, and something in you is more present than it was before, more able to be simply here with them, in the particular form they are in right now, without the slight distance that comes from trying to hold the moment still against its own moving. You may find it in a moment of grief that does not arrive as expected. That is, in some way you cannot fully name, wider than you thought it would be, more willing to hold both the loss and the love simultaneously without demanding that one cancel the other. You may find it in the quiet that happens after a long cry, when the body has given what it needed to give, and something underneath the crying is strangely, unexpectedly still. These are not signs that the teaching has been understood in the way a lesson is understood. They are signs that the river has been moving through you in the way a river moves, quietly, steadily, shaping what it shapes without announcing itself. You do not need to monitor it. You do not need to check whether it is working. You need only to rest and let the night be the night, and trust that the water knows the way to the sea. The love you carry for what you are afraid of losing does not require the thing to hold still in order to be real. The love is real. The river is real. And the river is moving as it has always moved, as it will move through the night and into the morning that is already somewhere very far east of here beginning to arrive. Let the night be the night. Let the river move. Let the body rest. Breathe. And again. And again. The night receives you entirely. Somewhere tonight, cherry blossoms are falling where no one is watching. They are falling anyway, completing the arc of their particular flowering, perfectly, in the dark and the silence, without an audience, because beauty does not require an audience to occur. The blossom is complete in its falling. The falling is not failure. The falling is what the blossom does when the flowering is done, and the flowering was complete, and now the falling is complete. And next spring, another blossom will open on the same branch, and will not be this blossom, and will be just as complete. Somewhere a bell is sounding at the early hour. Somewhere else its echo is still arriving at the far edge of a valley. Somewhere a river is moving through the dark with the particular unhurried certainty of something that has been moving longer than anyone has been counting. Moving through stone and season and the long accumulation of years, moving without urgency and without fatigue, simply moving because moving is what it does. And somewhere in the quiet of a monastery or a hospital or a house at the edge of a city where a child is sleeping in the next room, someone is sitting in the dark with the weight of loving something that will not always be here in exactly this form, and they are sitting with it in the way song sat with the tree. without looking away, without requiring the tree to be other than what it is, with the kind of presence that is not peace exactly, but is something more durable than peace. The willingness to be here, fully in whatever the moment is made of, even when what it is made of includes grief and fear and the specific tenderness of knowing that what you love is also moving. These are not separate things. The blossom and the bell and the river and the fear of loss and the love that underlies the fear and the person sitting in the dark with both of them at once. All of them are the river. All of them are moving. All of them are the same river and never the same water. All of them are, in the oldest and most complete sense available, at rest in their moving. You are held tonight by what you did not arrange. The air moving in and out without your instruction. The dark doing what it has always done, making room, making quiet, making the conditions for the rest that is deeper than decision. The night has been here longer than you're worrying about it. It knows what to do. Let it do it. Nothing you love will stay exactly as it is. Everything you love is moving, and you can love the river anyway, fully without requiring it to stop. That is the teaching. 7 stories have said it, 7 ways from 7 directions, and the teaching is the same in all 7. The river is still moving. Sleep now. Let it move. Sleep well. And thank you for joining us here at Quiet Lotus.